care. Just tell them I'm not here. Alright, I think we should go ahead and get started. If you have any problems with the audio, let me know. I did it on full stream last time, and then when I went back to listen to it briefly, it was terrible. I don't know what was running, but it was just a shh the whole time. You couldn't even hear me. It was bad. Don't know what it is. So if anybody hears anything, let me know. I'm clearly not a tech-savvy person, considering I've had so many issues trying to get this stream up and running smoothly. But I am learning, so bear with me. Doing a bit different thing with the music today. Rob Zombie, love Rob Zombie. He is my favorite, and so figured we'd play his Educated Horses album. Anyways, let's move on to the topic of the day. Well, the news, but like scientific, archaeological news. Okay, Bronze Age farmers gave preferential treatment to cows over domesticated sheep and goats. The movements of ancient crops and animal domesticates across prehistoric Eurasia are well documented in the archaeological record. What is less well understood, how Bronze Age farmers and herders incorporated newly introduced domesticates like cows from southwestern Asia into their long-standing animal husbandry and culinary traditions. New research led by archaeologists at Washington University in St. Louis shows that meat and dairy played a more significant role in human diets in Bronze Age China than previously thought. The analysis also suggests that farmers and herders tended to sheep and goats differently than they did their cows. Unlike in other parts of the world, keeping cows closer to home and feeding them the byproducts of grains that they were growing from their own consumption, like the grass stalks of the millet plants. The study published in Scientific Reports integrates new and previously published data from 9 sites along the Hexi Corridor, a key region between the Gobi Desert and Tibetan Plateau that facilitates the movement of ancient crops between Central and East Asia. Petra Biglava, sorry if I butchered that. There's like a fly in here, and it's ticking me off. It's like landing on me randomly, and then it just flies off. I can't capture it or anything. It's annoying. I'm sure all of you have dealt with flies like that, where it's just one fly, and he just has to touch you for some reason. That'd be cool. Just, go off and do your own thing, but you have to keep touching me. Now you gotta die. Research Associate and Xinyi Liu, as Associate Professor of Archaeology and Arts and Sciences, based their analysis on bone records and other isotopic data from humans, animals, and plants. Using the method of stable isotope analysis, we looked at the diets of the local herbivores that were managed in the Bronze Age Hexi Corridor of northwestern China. The results showed that cattle and sheep or goats were managed distinctly in different ecological niches across the study region. We proposed that this was a result of varying management choices made by the local farmers, who aimed to strike a balance between tradition and innovation. Isn't that a hard balance to maintain? In previous research, this method has been applied to understanding the nature of human diets and the role of different domesticates in it. She said, in this paper, we switched focus to trying to understand the minutiae of animal diets and what that tells us about the animal management in the Bronze Age. Okay, here's your conclusion. The results suggest a similar process in the adoption and localization of cattle in the Hexi Corridor, an animal domesticated in a markedly different environment, Liu said. In locations with limited grazing land suitable for pasturing of cattle, people adapted the local pig-rearing economy towards cattle stall feeding. Okay. Honestly, not the most interesting to me personally. They raised their animals differently and had to adapt according to where they lived. Okay? I guess if you actually study, like, domestication and how they did handle their farms, that's interesting. Personally, I'm not finding it too interesting. Maybe it's just the writing, the way it was written, kind of dull. But good on you. Good on you, archaeologists at Washington University. 137 human genomes in the Middle East fill gaps in human history. So, whole genome sequencing efforts around the world have offered important insights into human diversity, historical migrations, and the relationships between people at different regions. But scientists still don't have a complete picture because some regions and people remain understudied. A new study helps to fill one of those big gaps for generating more than 100 high-coverage genome sequences from high Middle Eastern populations using linked reading sequences. And it's probably, like, getting enough data is difficult, and then also in such a variable area, like, the Middle East has had such a, like, long history of people coming and going and staying and being conquered or conquering and all kinds of stuff. It's gotta be difficult to follow, because it was, like, that's how people left Africa and went up, and then it was the connection to Asia, so... Some of the most notable findings: the identification of 4.8 million new gene variants that are specific to Middle Eastern populations that could now provide the basis for future research. Okay. Genetic variants that show evidence of selection, in other words, mutations that spread unusually quickly, potentially due to adaptation to the changing environment and lifestyle. In the Levant, where agriculture was first developed, populations experienced a massive growth around the transition to agriculture that wasn't paralleled in Arabia. Wasn't paralleled in Arabia. Well, the adaptation of agriculture, we knew it led to an increase in the population. That's not too much of a surprise, but I guess seeing it genetically and being able to actually identify how much of an increase it had, that's important. Having a steady influx of food is pretty important to be able to maintain a large population. Not having to always move, not having to always worry about where your next meal is coming from, and like staying protected from predators. When you live in a community, it's a lot easier to maintain the safety of the community when it comes to large predatory animals. I mean, look at our cities. We don't exactly see mountain lions too often. It's becoming more and more seen coming around into the cities and suburbs. It's not too much of a concern for a lot of people, which is a good thing. But as you guys probably know, there's been more and more sightings in cities and towns, suburbs, of such animals. Bears too. I heard recently that bears have been kind of an issue coming into cities. Oh, there was this one video. It was crazy. This lady, a bear with her cubs, was like protecting her dogs, and this lady went and hit the bear. I'm like, I guess you do what you gotta do. I don't know if I'd be hitting a bear personally. Also, agriculture developed in, like, multiple locations. It didn't just, like, the Levant is known for it, but it's not the only place that developed. It actually developed in several different locations independently, which is a very interesting study. Arabian population suffered a severe population decrease around 6,000 years ago, which coincides with the change in climate in Arabia, turning it from a green, wet region into the largest sand desert in the world today. Okay, so food, water went bye-bye, so did the population. Middle Easterners, they probably didn't just die off. They probably all, like, I'm sure some people died off, but a lot of people probably left the area and went somewhere that's a bit more hospitable. Middle Easterners descend from the same population that expanded out of Africa 50,000 to 60,000 years ago. Arabian groups have significantly lower Neanderthal ancestry than other Eurasians, potentially caused by the excess basal Eurasian and African ancestry in Arabians that depletes their Neanderthal ancestry. Okay. So they're saying that Arabian groups probably did intermingle with Neanderthals back when they were alive, but after Neanderthals died off, they continued to mingle with Eurasians and Africans, which didn't have any Neanderthal DNA, and that sort of depleted it. Makes sense. The movement of populations during the Bronze Age potentially spread the Semitic languages from the Levant to Arabia and East Africa. Okay. An increase in the frequency of variants associated with type 2 diabetes in some populations in the past 2,000 years, suggesting that variants that were beneficial in the past are today associated with diseases. Wow, yeah. Curious how type 2 diabetes, I wonder if it causes something, that variant causes something else, as well as type 2, and that something else was beneficial. I wonder what it could have been. Interesting. Very interesting. Alright. Let's continue on. Researchers use AI to unlock the secrets of ancient texts. The Abbey Library of St. Gall in Switzerland is home to approximately 160,000 volumes of literary and historical manuscripts dating back to the 8th century, all of which are written by hand on parchment in languages rarely spoken in modern times. To preserve these historical accounts of humanity, such texts, numbering in the millions, have been kept safely stored away in libraries and monasteries all over the world. A significant portion of these collections are available to the general public through digital imagery, but experts say there is an extraordinary amount of material that has never been read, a treasure trove and insight into the world's history hidden within. That's also, like, these things, if they're written on paper, they have an expiration date. Like, paper will decay, even if kept in the, like, best conditions. Those dry, cool environments, it will still decay, and that information will be lost forever. So if we can get copies of it without damaging those manuscripts, we really should. And then there's the issue of actually being able to read it, because it's a different language, and maybe it's not really written well. Maybe the writer had terrible handwriting. I don't know. Yeah, work on your handwriting, guys. Don't be like doctors where you can't read what they say. Now researchers and just because we have computers now doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to write nicely. Now researchers at University of Notre Dame are developing an artificial neural network to read complex ancient handwriting based on human perception to improve capabilities of deep learning transcription. We're dealing with historical documents written in styles that have long fallen out of fashion. Going back many centuries, and in languages like Latin, which are rarely ever used anymore, said Walter Schreier. The Dennis O'Dowd Collegiate Associate Professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering at Notre Dame. You can get beautiful photos of these materials, but what we've set out to do is automate transcription in the way that mimics the perception of the page through the eyes of the expert reader and provides a quick, searchable reading of the text. This must be some really difficult work. Like, I bet this has taken countless hours of, like, code writing to get this, and it's probably still needs a lot of work. This is impressive, and that's something that, like, I really like about anthropology and archaeology is we actually utilize the tools and the knowledge of other scientific fields in order to improve our own field. We're kind of a conglomeration of everything else, because you kind of need it in order to study humans' past. So cool stuff. AI to read old books. Love it. 100 years ago, Northern Ireland's unholy war resulted in a deadly summer. In July 1921, an outburst of sectarian violence in Belfast claimed 16 lives on the eve of a truce between Great Britain and Ireland. By the summer of 1921, Ireland's bid for independence from Great Britain had all but reached an impasse. After nearly 2.5 years of fighting, the Irish Republican Army had exhausted its supplies of weaponry and ammunition. The British Empire, meanwhile, was ready to end the protracted and increasingly unpopular guerrilla war against its neighbor. The beleaguered combat. I don't even know that word. Let's look it up. Beleaguered. I don't think I'm saying it right. Definition. Besieged. Surrounded by enemy troops. Beleaguered. I did say it right. Besieged and surrounded by enemy groups. Okay. The beleaguered combatants agreed to a ceasefire slated to take effect on July 11th. Hostilities paused across the country, but as Associated Press reported on the eve of the agreement, the spirit of truce was the last thing to be observed in Belfast, a northern Irish city marked by sectarian divisions between the Protestant majority and the Catholic minority. On July 10th alone, a day now known as Belfast Bloody Sunday, an outburst of street violence claimed the lives of 16 people and destroyed more than 160 homes. As a general rule, Irish Protestants at the time tended to be Unionists loyal to the British Crown. Catholics typically supported the Nationalists, or Republican, push for an independent Irish state. Though Northern and Southern Ireland, separate political entities created by the partition of Ireland in May of that year, were home to followers of both religious denominations. Protestants, Unionists, tended to outnumber Catholic Republicans in the north and vice versa in the south and west. Heather Jones, a historian at the University College London, explains that the division between Unionists and Nationalists mapped into existing historic religious differences in Ireland that dated back to the religious wars of the 16th century Protestant Reformation. Alan F. Parkinson, author of Belfast's Unholy War, The Troubles of the 1920s, adds that Northern Ireland had a radically different demographic composition than the South, with close to 70% of residents identifying as Protestant of British stock. Ironically, says Jones, the different views on self-governance between Unionists and Nationalists in Northern and Southern Ireland in this period stemmed from the same roots: the rise of nationalism across Europe in the late 19th century and the spread of populist belief in nationalist ideals and demands for nation-states. In Belfast, IRA attacks on police often sparked harsh reprisals against Catholics who found themselves unprotected by the British government. There, the truce's promise of peace attracted suspicion. As Parkinson writes in Belfast's Unholy War, Unionists feared that Republicans were merely using the ceasefire as a breathing space and an opportunity to redeploy forces from the south and west and the north. Unionists also expressed concern that the truce would negate the results of partition, forcing Ireland's reunification and undermining their security and identity as loyal British citizens, says Jones. Interesting. Wow. interesting stuff. 5 ways humans evolved to be athletes. I don't know if we evolved to be athletes. We evolved to be able to, like, survive. We do have endurance, our ability to sweat, long distance. Running is our forte. We are good at it, even if not all of us are good at it. I hate running. I'm a terrible runner. Terrible. But, our species, we're good at it. So, don't think we evolved to be athletes, just evolved to be able to survive in our environments. The upcoming Olympics will showcase some of the most extraordinary human feats of strength, speed, and agility. As an archaeologist who focuses on the development of the human species over evolutionary history, it's interesting to consider how and why we came to be so good at certain things, from javelin throwing to 500-meter sprint. Much of what makes our bodies capable of athletic prowess comes from well before we were Homo sapiens. Human athletic paleobiology is a branch of research that uses trained athletes to explore adaptations of the human body. These studies focus on metabolism and peak physical performance, limb biomechanics, and other aspects of human anatomy and physiology to get a sense of the types of activities that humans in the past might have been capable of performing. Here is a short roundup of some things we humans can do that make for great sport, along with a quick look at where these skills come from and how long they've been around. We run. Like I said, we are excellent runners. For long distance, we can't really be beat. Sprinting, we're not the best sprinters. Look at horses and cheetahs and everything else. Everything can outrun us in speed. But if we are going long distances, then we are golden. That's how we hunted a lot, is we just exhaust our prey. The ancestors of modern humans have walked upright since around 4 million years ago, when members of the genus Australopithecus first started spending more time on the ground than in treetop. Do you need to go outside? Outside? I'm sorry, hold on. If I don't let her out, she'll potty on the floor. And nobody wants a dog to potty on the floor, right? Okay. Sorry about the interruption. It's for a good cause. She thanks you for your patience. Okay. Time on the ground and in treetop habitats. Evolving to be bipedal changed the number of things about the human skeletal structure. Our pelvis is shorter and wider than that of other living primates. This is because we move by exerting force mostly through muscles in our butts and legs rather than along our backs and shoulders, as a knuckle-walking chimp would. Our lower femurs, the big bone in your thigh, develop a specific shape called the bicondylar angle as we learn to walk. So the bicondylar angle is, you have your femur, it's a pretty straight bone until you look at how it's actually supposed to sit. And the bicondylar femur, so when it, in your knee, has 2 condyles, 2 smooth parts that glide over the tibia, the lower part of your leg. Hey! Sea bass. And those are actually not straight. So if you look at a human skeleton, let me see if I can get, no, that's not a good one. Okay, here we go. So if you look at the femur, it is a straight bone, but it does not sit straight, and that's because of the condyles here and here. One just dips a little bit lower than the other. causing this kind of V shape for your legs to come in like this, and that actually brings the center of mass back into the center rather than being off kilter. This angle is really important for our ability to be able to walk upright. Chimps don't have this angle. Theirs goes straight. Let me see if I can find that for you. Upright. That's decent. So you see, theirs is perfectly straight, and they can't really walk upright. They can, but for a limited amount of time. And when they do, they kind of do this rocking motion in order to do it. And we don't have to rock back and forth because we have this angle. So, very important development that occurred. Okay, this allows us to stride in a rolling motion, transferring our weight smoothly from side to side as we go. If you've ever seen a gorilla and chimpanzee walk on 2 legs instead of 4, you'll notice that they have a much more waddling gait. Like I said, they have to kind of walk back and forth. Homo sapiens in particular, with longer legs and shorter Achilles tendons than some of our ancestors, seem particularly well suited in running long distances. Researchers have suggested that early humans were able to hunt prey like antelope or zebra by repeatedly startling them into running long stretches in the midday heat, eventually running the animals to exhaustion. Yep, that's kind of how modern day hunter-gatherers do it as well. You run them to exhaustion. You just keep going after them, stab them with a stick a little bit, scare them, they go running, their heart starts pumping, they're bleeding more, and then eventually they just die. Something I do want to say about the Australopithecus, they say that they began walking upright. And they sort of did. But it's kind of difficult to say that they were upright all the time. Looking at their skeleton, which I have worked with a few Australopithecus skeletons, casts, studying them, and they had kind of a mosaic of traits that you would expect to see in bipedal species. They I should do like an entire stream on that. It's interesting stuff. We could look at Lucy and see kind of how her skeleton is and what mosaic traits I'm talking about, because when you look at whether a species is bipedal or quadrupedal or anything in between, you look at the hands, you look at the arms, you look at the pelvis, you look at the back, the rib cage, you look at the feet. Feet are important. Our feet are amazing, actually. You'll look at like proportions of arms and legs to one another, the general shape. So it talked about our pelvis being kind of short and wide compared to the like chimp, which is, so you see this, it's kind of a nice butterfly shape in this picture, and then you look at the chimp and it's very elongated. It's got all the same stuff, it's just shaped differently. Okay, next, we sweat. Yes, this is important. Sweating is such a great evolutionary adaptation we developed. When we compare ourselves to other living primates, one of the most notable differences is a lack of body hair and the fact that we sweat. Thermoregulation, I don't know why that was hard for me to read, thermoregulation, the body's ability to maintain an ideal temperature, is critical for all mammals, but humans are unique in our capacity to sweat all over our bodies, creating evaporative cooling. Is the music okay? Like, is my audio good? Are we having any issues going on? Please let me know. When did we lose all our hair and become sweaty, naked creatures? That is like a really horrible way to describe us. Sweaty, naked creatures. Why? Counterintuitively, studies have shown that humans and chimps, our closest primate relatives, actually have roughly the same number of follicles over our bodies. Our hair is simply much shorter and finer. No music. You can't hear the music. Can you hear me?
I'm smart.
I'm streaming. A constant hissing sound? A constant hissing sound. What could that be? There's like nothing. Could be the fan that's over there. I don't see why that. I mean, I can barely hear it. It's not that loud. Let me test it. How's that? Is the hissing gone? Let me see if I can do the music too. Because I've got Rob Zombie playing, and you gotta be able to hear that. That's good stuff. Okay. How's that? What the? Oh, jeez. Can you hear the music and not hissing now? Still no difference. Okay. So we'll just, how about now? Can you hear the hissing? I'm like, oh, that's better. That's way better. I was whited out by that light. It's still there. That is so weird. Okay, how about now? Can you still hear it? There's like weird feedback from all of these. Actually, let's put that in. How's that? Fix it before the next stream. Is it like really bad? Are you able to actually be able to pay attention? What? Oh, did I fix it? It's gone. Okay, I think so. I like cut off some of the other audio. Apparently, there's issues going on with like I'm super quiet. How about now? Can you hear me? Think we're good. Okay. I'm gonna continue on. So sweating. So what prompted the change from full fur to fine hair? Charles Darwin proposed that it was a sexually selected trait, which actually has a huge like effect on evolution, sexual selection. It's a whole part of it. That our distant female ancestors preferred and mated with less hairy males. However, the more likely scenario has more to do with the environmental rather than sexual pressures. During our evolution in Africa, the move from forests to more open, hotter environments meant that the ability to keep cool contributed to survival in a big way. Oof,
Yes, if any of you live in a hot environment, you know being able to keep cool is important because you will die if you can't. I have personally, because I've lived in the desert uh, most of my life, and it's if you like heat exhaustion comes on quick. I've had it happen before. I've been so dehydrated that I should have gone to the hospital, but I didn't. I've had heat exhaustion several times where I had to sit down in the shade, drink water, kind of cool myself off, and I couldn't really move. It comes on quick. So, yeah, if you can't, you die. Makes sense that, the troop doesn't want to have to be constantly stopping for someone who needs to cool down because they're a little hairier than the others. Um, Our sweaty selves can now compete in sporting events even in the heat, although climate change might soon make most cities too hot to reasonably play host to Summer Olympics. Well, cities, yes. I mean, we have the whole issue of uh, like concrete jungle thing happening where it like the cement holds the heat and then it radiates and it just makes the entire place hotter. So, hold on. Just get that a little bit. Um, yes. I mean, we're technologically advanced. We can find ways around that if the cities that we require to be able to thrive in our uh, like lives, our economies, our society, we can find ways to improve that. And we should. We really should. We throw. While the bottom half of our body has evolved away from an arboreal style, our upper body still retains traits that we inherited from tree dwellers. Our glenohumeral joint, the ball and socket connection between our upper arm and scapula, so your shoulder, the glenohumeral joint, allows us to swing our arms around in full rotation. This is a very different type of mobility from that of a quadruped animal that doesn't swing in trees. A dog or cat's front legs, for example, primarily swing back and forth and couldn't perform a butterfly swim stroke. We, on the other hand, can. Is that right? This is a very different type of mobility from that of a quadruped animals that don't swing in trees. This is a very different type of mobility from that of a quadruped animal that doesn't swing in trees. Mobility from that of a quadruped animals. I don't know. I don't think that's correct. Anyways, we're not grammar people here. Our rotatable shoulder joint also allows us to throw overhand. The ability to throw accurately and forcefully appears to have originated at least 2 million years ago when our ancestors Homo erectus recent research also shown that Neanderthals might have thrown spears to hunt at a distance. The few known examples of Neanderthal spears were long thought to be used only for thrusting and close and killing of prey, in part because when researchers tried to throw replicas, they didn't go far. Recently, however, researchers put replicas in the hands of trained javelin throwers and were stunned to see the spears fly much farther and faster, more than 65 feet. Well, that makes sense. That really, yes, it's going to be researchers who test these ideas, but if you don't do it, like, that'd be me saying, we're not really runners because I can't run. But, like, you get someone who actually runs. I don't know, seems kind of obvious, doesn't it? We are handy. Yes, our hands. Humans' hands are unique in their dexterity, which has evolutionary roots as early as 2 million years ago. Evidence for this early development of hands like ours, with opposable thumbs and the ability to apply force in either a strong or delicate grasp, comes from a single metacarpal bone, one of the bones that forms the palm. For a hominin found at a site in Kenya, this grip lets us do everything from grasping a pen to a golf club. The evolution of our hands has included both biological and cultural selection for right versus left-handed individuals. Both Neanderthal and early Homo sapiens populations seem to have had roughly the same ratio of right-handed to left-handed individuals as modern humans. Today, we are about 85% right-handed. Researchers have suggested one explanation for this lies in the emphasis of cooperation in human communities, which favors everyone having the same handedness so they can share tools. For example, over competition, which favors difference so a lefty can beat a right-hander in a fight. Some evidence for this theory comes from sport. A study from how many elite athletes are left-handed across different sports showed that the more competitive the sport, the greater proportion of lefties. I didn't know that. That's interesting. I guess just kind of throwing the right-handed people off a little bit. We play with balls. Many species of animals play, but humans are the only species to play games involving organized rules and equipment. Well, of course. It's We only play by throwing, kicking, or otherwise propelling balls of various materials. We sometimes do so with bats, sticks, or rackets. The generally accepted theory for the evolutionary origins of play is that it allows children to learn actions and tasks that they will need to master as adults. Not just that, it teaches you how to work with other people, which is like our prime skill to learn to survive. In hunter-gatherer populations, games that help children develop accuracy, power, and hand-eye coordination are useful practice for hunting. There is plenty of archaeological evidence to suggest that children played with miniature versions of hunting tools or other tools of adult trades going back to at least 400,000 years ago. Well, of course. You gotta teach them. I mean, even the games, the toys and stuff we provide kids today is to teach them to be able to grow up and utilize the tools that we use today. How many kids do we see now actually playing with iPads and cell phones? Because as adults, we utilize those so much. I mean, I don't know how your guys' jobs work, but mine, I utilize my phone a lot for my job. I use the GPS on my phone. I use notes on my phone, my camera for work. I utilize my computer a lot doing the stream and stuff. I know that that's not every like archaeologist, it's kind of odd to be streaming, but the tools we give kids is to help with what they need in the future. So video games and such is important. That hand-eye coordination and problem-solving skills. This was interesting, and it's always nice kind of connecting things to today so that we can understand our own bodies kind of, and it's cool because it's the Olympics, which are going on. I don't know if you guys watch the Olympics. I never do. I get highlights every now and then if someone does something spectacular. I mean, they're always doing something spectacular, but I'm not like sitting down and watching all of the competitions. Neanderthal and Denisovan blood groups deciphered. Did it? I didn't know it ended 3 days ago. See, I told you, I get highlights. I don't really watch it. I should. It's interesting stuff, but I don't know. Okay. The blood groups of 3 Neanderthals, 1 Denisovan, have been determined by a team including a paleoanthropologist, population geneticists, and hematologists. Their research provides a new data for understanding the origins, history, and health of these extinct hominid lineages. Blood groups analysis for 3 Neanderthals and 1 Denisovan by a team from the Anthropologie Bioculturelle super long research unit, confirm hypotheses concerning their African origin, Eurasian dispersal, and interbreeding with early Homo sapiens. The researchers also found further evidence of low genetic diversity and possible demographic fragility. Their findings are published in PLOS ONE. The extinct hominin lineages of the Neanderthals and Denisovans were present throughout Eurasia from 300,000 to 40,000 years ago, despite prior sequencing of about 15 Neanderthal and Denisovan individuals. The study of the genes underlying blood groups had hitherto been neglected. Hitherto. Why? Yet blood group systems were the first markers used by anthropologists to reconstruct the origins of hominin populations, their migrations, and their interbreeding. In a new study, scientists from the CNRS and the French blood establishment have examined the previously sequenced genomes of 1 Denisovan and 3 Neanderthal females who lived 100,000 to 40,000 years ago. In order to identify their blood groups and consider what they may reveal about humans' evolutionary history. Of the 40-some known blood group systems, the team concentrated on the 7 usually considered for blood transfusion purposes, the most common of which are the ABO, determining the AB and O blood types, and RH systems. Wait a minute. Of the 40-some known blood group systems, the team concentrated on the 7 usually considered for blood transfusion purposes, the most common of which are the ABO. Oh, systems, not that there are 40 different types of blood, but that there are different ways to categorize. Okay. The finding bolster previous hypotheses, but also offer new surprises. While it was long thought that Neanderthals were all type O, just as chimpanzees are all type A and gorillas all type B, the researchers demonstrated that these ancient hominins already displayed the full range of ABO variability observed in modern humans. Extensive analysis covering other blood group systems turned up alleles that argue in favor of African origins for Neanderthals and Denisovans. Especially surprising is the discovery that the Neanderthals harbored a unique Rh allele absent in modern humans, with the notable exceptions of 1 Aboriginal Australian and 1 Papuan. Do these 2 individuals bear testimony to interbreeding of Neanderthals and modern humans before the migration of the later into Southeast Asia? Makes sense. Finally, the study sheds light. It's actually really cool if you look at the genetic information and the migratory history of native Australians, the Aboriginals, and those in the Indonesian islands and everything. It's super interesting, and they have very, very unique genetic history. Probably should make a stream about that. That'd be a good one. I should write these down. Let me write this down, because I won't think. And I should just write down what I'm thinking. Okay, so let me see. Genetic history. What was the other one I wanted to do? There was another one. Oh, Lucy's skeletal. Let me just write that down. Okay. So this isn't about hominins, but it was interesting, and I wanted to look at it. This sponge fossil may be the earliest record of animal life. Earliest record of animal life. The 890 million year old relic predates periods of extreme cold and the planet's second oxygenation spike. More than 2 decades ago, when Elizabeth Turner was still a graduate student studying fossilized microbial reefs, she hammered out hundreds of lemon-sized rocks from weathered cliff faces in Canada's Northwest Territories. She hauled her rocks back to the lab, sawed them into 30-micron thick slivers, about half the diameter of a human hair, and scrutinized her handiwork under a microscope. Only in about 5 of the translucent slices she found a sea of slender squiggles that looked nothing like the microbes she was after. It just didn't fit. The microstructure was too complicated, says Turner, and it looked to me kind of familiar. Turner had an inkling of what the textured surfaces could represent, but as an early career academic then, she withheld her findings so as not to cause a stir. After several return trips and a slew of publications, graduate student, okay, by other researchers earlier this year on similar looking fossils, Turner, now a field geologist at Laurentian University, is finally ready to step forward with her discovery. The spangled stones she found are sponge fossils dated at 890 million years old, placing sponges as the earliest prehistoric animal that humanity has ever found so far. Published today in the journal Nature, her findings suggest that animals popped up long before Earth was considered hospitable enough to support complex life. It's a big step forward, says Joachim Reitner, a geobiologist of the University of Göttingen in Germany, who wasn't involved in the study. Like Turner, he's convinced that the fossils are sponges because the complexity of the craggy curlicues, curlicues rules out all other bacterial or fungal candidates. We have no other choices, he said. Pale streaks adorn Turner's rock slices. As seen under the microscope, the field of view measures 1.5 millimeters across. Little squiggles. While they might not look the part, sponges are indeed animals, and the most basic of them all. These multicellular organisms lack the cell walls in plants and can produce sperm. Most of them live rooted in one spot all their lives in rivers or ocean bottoms. Sponges are filter feeders. Their bodies contain a 3D network of hollow channels to circulate air in and out. Simple as they are, they can sieve up to 120 gallons of water per pound of tissue every day to vacuum clean out organic matter such as bacteria, which they feed on. That's a lot. Holy cow. Turner's fossils were once a keratocene demosponge that's reminiscent of its modern day descendants. This type of sponge is stiff but springy, just like the artificial cleaning sponges found in drugstores. The sponges, immortalized in Turner's rocks, lived during the time when the supercontinent Rodinia, a landmass containing parts of all the modern continents, disintegrated, flooding ancestral Canada with seawater. Rodinia, that's the one before Pangea, I believe. Yes, because it was Pangea last. So, yeah, we didn't have just one supercontinent, we had like 3. Wide patches squeezed between the nooks and crannies of reefs of photosynthesizing cyanobacteria. Earth had very little oxygen then, so Turner says that the sponges likely lived where the microbial oxygen factories proliferated to allow sponges to breathe a little easier. Over the next millions of years, the sponges even survived the Cryogenian period, an era of snowball Earth when the entire planet turned frigid and was overrun with glaciers. Another 50 to 300 million years would pass before major animals with complex biology such as dinosaurs would make their debut. Damn, sponges! Not only do Turner's fossilized sponges suggest that animals endured the oxygen-starved atmospheres and devastating snowball Earth, they're also nearly double the age of the next oldest evidence of sponges. But the results aren't surprising at all, says Roger Simmons, a geobiologist at MIT who wasn't involved in the study. The sponge's age agrees with the evolutionary timeline suggested by genomic data. The genetics of modern-day sponges puts their origins as far back as billions years ago, says Simmons, coinciding with the age of Turner's Ceratocene sponge fossils. There's a history of life encoded into the genes of everything that's currently on the planet, says Simmons, and the genomic data doesn't lie. He adds, not he did. He adds, I'm totally comfortable with the age on the report. So it seems she was scared to release that information that she found, and it turns out everybody's agreeing with her. That sucks. She could have really made a name for herself early on, but it makes sense. It's a hard world out there in academia. No judgment here. New project aims to create most detailed 3D map of the universe. Another thing, not archaeology related, but I thought it was cool. Ooh, I'm sorry. I'm starting to not be able to finish. Okay, I'm not gonna do this one. Ooh. Research final nail in the coffin of Paranthropus as hard object feeders. I may have to finish this next week. Just one more. One more, and then we'll be done, okay? New research from the University of Otago debunks a long-held belief about our ancestors' eating habits. For more than 60 years, researchers have believed Paranthropus, a close fossil relative of ours, which lived about 1 to 3 million years ago, evolved massive back teeth to consume hard food items such as seeds and nuts, while our own direct ancestors, the genus Homo, is thought to have evolved smaller teeth due to eating softer foods such as cooked food and meats. However, after traveling to several large institutes and museums in South Africa, Japan, and the United Kingdom, and studying tooth fractures in more than 20,000 teeth of fossil and living primate species, Dr. Ian Toll, an Otago biological anthropologist working with Dr. Carolina Locke of the Faculty of Dentistry, says this neat picture is far more complex than once thought. It always is. By individually studying each tooth and recording the position and size of any tooth fractures, we show tooth chipping does not support regular hard food eating in Paranthropus robustus, therefore potentially putting an end to the argument that this group as a whole were hard food eaters, he says. Dr. Toll says the findings challenge our understanding of dietary and behavioral changes during human evolution. The results are surprising, with human fossils so far studied, those in our own genus Homo, showing extremely high rates of tooth fractures, similar to living hard objects eating primates. Yet Paranthropus show extremely low levels of fracture, similar to primates that eat soft foods or leaves. Although in recent years there has been a slow acceptance that another species of Paranthropus, Paranthropus boisei, found in East Africa, was unlikely to have regularly eaten hard foods, the notion that Paranthropus evolved their large dental apparatus to eat hard foods has persisted. Therefore, this research can be seen as the final nail in the coffin of Paranthropus as hard object feeders. Don't know if it's the final nail. The fact that humans show such contrasting chipping patterns is equally significant and will have knock-on effects for further research, particularly research on dietary changes during human evolution and why the human dentition has evolved the way it has, He says, the regular tooth fractures in fossil humans may be caused by non-food items, such as grit or stone tools. However, regardless of the cause, these groups were subjected to substantial tooth wear and fractures, so it raises questions to why are teeth reduced in size, especially compared to groups like Paranthropus. Dr. Toll's research will now focus on if our dentition evolved smaller due to other factors to allow other parts of the skull to expand, leading to evolution, then favoring other tooth properties to protect it against wear and fracture instead of increased tooth size. This is something we are investigating now to see if tooth enamel may have evolved different characteristics among the great apes. Our research as a whole may also have implications for our understanding of oral health, since fossil humans samples typically show immaculate dental health. Since extreme tooth wear and fractures were the norm, our ancestors likely evolved dental characteristics to not just cope with but actually utilize this dental tissue loss. For example, without substantial tooth wear, our dentitions can face all sorts of issues, including impacted wisdom teeth, tooth crowding, and even increased susceptibility to cavities. So they're saying because there were fewer breaks in their teeth, they didn't eat hard foods. But their teeth are larger and strong. They like the makeup of them are different too. So if they evolved to be able to eat hard foods, would their teeth have chipped as much as ours would have? I don't know. It's interesting. And it's right up my alley. I want to actually read the real paper. Do they have it? Right here. Those robust tooth chipping patterns do not support regular hard mastication. Tooth chipping prevalence and patterns in extinct primates. Oh, I want to read that one too. Chipping the wear patterns in extinct primate and fossil hominin molars. Functional cusps are associated with extensive wear but low levels of fracture. Interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. I want to read this. Anyways, I won't go through all of that with you guys. I may do a little review later if you'd like. Anyways, thank you for joining me. I hope you guys had a interesting time, and I still have to work on like some opening and closing statement. I've got to come up with something. That's what people do, right? They have like a set script for closing. Anyways, I hope you guys have a great evening, and I will see you guys next week.